Welcome back, audience. Isn't it wonderful? Hope you're doing good. Um, I got a good one for you. I'm gonna try to unravel it, just like unraveling the sweet chocolate with the chewy nugget center. So here we go. It's pretty cool, you know. I really like the nuggets, not chicken nuggets, but we already been through that. What I'm trying to say, check this out. So you know when we go through life and we have this belief that says there's if you go one side there's good, if you go another side there's evil, good and evil kind of thing, right? The linear type of view of the reality. Okay, linear. And everybody lives like almost everybody that I know lives in this fashion. Um but if you really look into this, you can look into it yourself. What we call the positive and the negative, it's not, you know, an ideal. Positive is not an ideal. Because if you look at physics and you look at electromagneticity, I know, you know, but you look, you don't have to understand too much. You just, if you understand the most basic thing, you'll see what the fuck is going on. So the opposite of evil is not good, because every time you see what you may call evil and you're opposing, what happens inside of you? Yep, evil. And how the fuck does that work, huh? So I want to do good, but you don't end up doing good, okay? It's a paradox. So what really happens is that when negative energy meets the positive energy, psh, violence sparks. When it's polarized, you know, when it's just a lot of negative and a lot of positive, psh, sparks. So the right way of looking at it is non-linear, and I would have to call it, it's a holographic view. It's a holographic view, and I'm gonna get to explain to you what does that mean and how is it, why is it important to know this, and how can this change the way you navigate your reality. Um, so what we actually are looking for is neither negative, neither positive. We're looking for the neutral. We're looking for the neutrality, because that's where the sweet spot is. Um, think about, for example, and neutrality is in between of things, and that always brings you to the best state of consciousness. Because now I'm going to get into the emotions, because the emotions is obviously the primordial thing that it happens on the emotional level. You see something that you would portray as evil, it creates an emotional reaction that could be like anger, and then from that anger stems all sorts of ideas of how to revenge, blah 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 blah, and then you end up into the same evil game. But now you call yourself, I'm a good guy because I'm trying to eliminate evil. In the meantime, you are actually doing evil things. You see, the good guy is just as evil as a bad guy. It's not really good guy. It's just an opposing evil. If you say like, what the fuck are you talking about? So what, are we supposed to just let evil happen? No, I'm saying that there is a way that could actually work, rather than create a perpetual war, because that's what happens when you always It never ends. It's a perpetual war because you always function on this linear way. There's good, there's bad, and so if there's bad, I have to fix it, and I'm gonna be good, and then you actually don't fucking fix it, you make it worse, and then worse and worse and worse and worse. All right, so let's kind of get the fuck out of this cycle, and let's change this view, this linear view, which is not true. This is not how reality works. It's a holographic, meaning that it has the center, like if it's the eye, and then you have this vortex of projection, like a projector, like a round circle that it spreads, and it creates that polar, opposites of these energies. And so you can see that at the center is quiet, and the more from the center it moves, the more violent it becomes. The closer to the center, the more it's weaved, and the more aligned it is. And so that nugget thing, I want to talk about that nugget thing. The ideal is in between of things, okay? Let's say emotionally. You see something evil, whatever, it doesn't have to be evil. You just see something that it triggers you and you have an emotion, negative emotion. You don't try to pile on the positive emotion on top of this, okay? You say, okay, there's negative emotion, and now you're looking what is in between the negative and the positive. You're not looking for the positive emotion, because this is the cycle of hedonistic or asceticism. Hedonism or asceticism. A lot of people talk about, oh, this is hedonistic, this is ascetic, but they don't say that the road is in the middle, the gut is on the side, as some people say. But then again, it's not just an intellectual understanding, it's like sensing on the emotional level, and because there is a capacity to focus. Okay, there's a capacity to focus on your emotion. We all know that you can focus on negative emotion, and then as you focus on a negative emotion, you can focus on whatever is in between of the negative and the positive, and then that will take you to the neutrality of it. Okay, it will take you to the neutrality of it. And there's two ways that you can go there. Every time because look, before I go into this, I'm just gonna tell you this freaking essence of this, okay? So and the essence is this. There's certain things that nobody argues about. Everybody experiences and everybody agrees upon. Those are the things that are true. Those are the things that are true. If you can have an opinion about it and you can't argue with it, then those are the things that are true. That's something that everybody shares. Everybody has understanding of pain, pleasure, depression, or fear. And then those are the words to describe the motion from the center. Okay, those are the words to describe the motion from the center. And as you can see, pleasure is not put on a positive light, because positive light is in the center and ideal. That's what I'm trying to get at. And also, as you can see, depression is not, and fear is not in the pain and pleasure. What's in between pain and the pleasure? And the answer is bliss. And then what's in between depression and fear? And the answer is peace. Peace and bliss, those are two primordial desires of our soul. Peace and bliss, those are two primordial desires of our soul. And that's what we call that universal peace. That's what sometimes we call unconditional love, or love, which is not the same as emotion love. That all pervading peace is a type of universal love. Let's just call it universal love, because the word unconditional also really confuses people, because it's not really unconditional. Then the center is what we call light. The bliss is light. That circle around it is peace. And if you ever looked at some of the stellar formations like quasar, you'll notice there's a disk, and then there's a center, and at that center there's jets, the gamma ray jets streaming in both directions, and the center is just a disk turning, right? So it basically shows you through your observation the ultimate alignment of celestial body, if you will. Maybe it's more like a stellar it's more like phenomena, let's just say, okay? But anyway, you see that there, right? And so that is we all have that primordial desire of the soul. Some people call it like, oh, the primordial desire is for God, but we don't have to use this word at all, because sometimes we use it in completely different meanings, blah blah blah. But I'm just saying that nobody can argue that bliss is amazing, bliss, ecstasy, or whatever it is amazing, or you would say that that's what you're looking for. And then that peace as well, nobody would say that they don't want peace. Everybody wants peace, and everybody wants bliss, and some degrees in between. Somebody wants more peace, but there is no peace without certain degree of bliss, and there is no bliss with certain degree of peace. You see, that's the spectrum, and that's the spectrum between the point and that circle. And in between those, what it is, that point is white, that circle is black, and in between all these colors there, diffracted colors, right? And these colors are those perfect aligned emotions. These are all neutral emotions. We're looking for that completion of that disc. There's bliss, there's peace, and there's neutrality of emotion. And then, of course, we don't look at this perfect rainbow state. We are actually looking for, depending on what our desire in the moment is. Could be joy, certain type of, positive soul, pride, whatever. There are 12 of these, actually. There are 12 of these rings between that white and that black. Okay? And I don't want to go into it too much for the sake of this video, for the sake of shortening this video. But that's what I'm trying to say. It's holographic. As you can see, it's all being projected, right? And the moment you split that, you start creating you take the bliss and you split it into pain or pleasure, and you take the peace and you split it in depression or fear. Everything is in between of things. Everything that you want and desire is in between of things. So instead of looking at life like this, oh, I'm having negative, so now look positive. This is going to get you in the cycle of pain and pleasure. You're experiencing something negative, you're going to look and seek pleasure. This is why you can say why seeking pleasure leads to degradation. This is why. Because the more you go into the pleasure, the more pain there is. And the more you go into the pain, the more pleasure there is. You got to go in between of things. Okay? And so every emotion is going to have a negative emotion, let's just say, or even positive, because positive is not really aligned emotion. What we're really looking for is neutral emotion. There's this joy, for example, is neutral. There's a real original joy is neutral. It's not, because it stems from inside of you. It wasn't something externally created. So there are 12 of these emotional states that you can call them neutral emotional states. Okay? That's what we're looking for. And I mean, if we start understanding, oh, that's what we're looking for, and then we're gonna start looking in between of things and not the opposite of it. That's what's going to take us closer to the center. And anywhere in life, with anything, whatever problem you have, look in between of things. And somebody says, is it this or is it that? The answer is in between. Um, both or in between. You see? But the mind has a problem with that, because the mind goes like, what do you mean in between of things? And if you go in between of things, you're gonna go into your heart, and then you're gonna feel that state of consciousness, which is what you initially are looking for. The first order of business is to have some form of that bliss and peace, of some form of that bliss and peace. And there are 12 of these, like I said, but of course we don't experience them exactly, just one of those, even though that's it's possibly possible, because, for example, the love would be green ray, right? Not that I not the one that I try to explain as this void and ultimate peace. That is different. But the green ray, that type of love, you know you can experience that. It's a type of emotion, and it's neutral emotions. It's in between of things, right? It's not happiness, and it's not grief. It's in between of things. It's neither grief, neither happiness. That's love. It's crazy, but that's what it is. Because when we start loading up this game, it splits those, and then that's what creates this game. And with the game is to keep put them back together into the center. So now that we know what kind of game we're playing, maybe that kind of will help to play it. And I'm saying, audience, try it. Try look for things that are in between. You may be very surprised. People sometimes call it grace. The grace is in between of things. And to finish this, like I said, soul desire is some degree of bliss or peace. Then it splits into those 12 different states, emotional, neutral emotion states. That's how I call them. You see, like all these models up to this point, it's all done by the mind. It's now hasn't been discovered it as being a holographic. Emotion is holographic. It's not linear. This is why, all these models that they're using, it never gets them, because they think that you have to get the positive, and that's what's going to make you happy. But that positive brings you into the negative, and then you keep on chasing the positive. And so this very model fucks with people's minds, because everybody believes that they have to get the positive emotion, and everybody is fucking looking for it and trying to and striving for it, not knowing that every single positive emotion will bring them negative. You see? It's a trap. This model, this is why I'm very categorical, and you can say that maybe I'm too categorical, but I like it that way. Like, why should I entertain something that is proven to be obsolete? This is why, to me, all psychologists are wrong. They're all wrong. Because the answer is a simple symbol. You don't need psychologists to feel. When you feel the negative emotion, look for what's in between. Focus on what is in between that negative emotion and what would be the positive emotion, and you can focus there. and you'll discover something nice, and you'll be able to. And so I have to say that there's two ways to do it, because with every negative emotion you can take it more towards the light or more towards the love. Meaning, what does that mean? That means that some negative emotions you may want to dive in all the way into the abyss of this, and then go into the darkest point of it, right? And that's more like a diving into this. That's more like a masculine way of diving into the abyss to retrieve the diamond, so to speak. And that's a very masculine way of dealing with emotion. But it brings out a certain type of blissful vibration from it. But there's a feminine way where that emotion is more like being hugged, rather than you diving into it and seeking, the darkest corners of it. You just give it space to it, and that emotion dissipates into the neutrality of that universal love. So I have to mention that, okay? Because sometimes I say, like, hey, face emotions, use courage, and maybe for some people who are more like feminine driven would be like, oh my god, that sounds ridiculous. Like, it sounds like a torture. Why would I fucking go there? Why would I go to the darkest places in my heart? Then you don't have to. You can just tune into that peace that is there while that negative emotion is there. And then you can say, well, there's a negative emotion, what would be the positive emotion? And then you look for the peace in between. Okay? And you can just dissipate it in that peace. You can find the peace about that emotion. It's more like you're leaning back or diving into this. And everything that I'm talking to you right now is a facet of life that isn't heavily neglected, because it deals with the with energies. It deals with something that is outside of mind, and it has structure, but it has a very, very basic structure, and it doesn't require anything outside of you. And that is the only way to grow as a soul. Because mind trying to improve itself, it cannot. But the second you improve your natural state by facing life in those ways that I'm describing, and again, you're polarizing either more towards peace or more towards bliss. This is why sometimes people are talking about, like, some people, oh, it's bliss, and the other one's like, what are you talking about, bliss? This is just peace. And look, it's a spectrum of both. You can be somewhere in between. You can be more towards bliss, more towards peace, but everybody's primordially looking for it, and it's the most easiest thing in the world. Actually, it's the first thing that's supposed to appear. And then you say, all right, so if I have peace and bliss, then what? Of course, when I say I have, there's peace and there's bliss, and that just doesn't end with that, even though it's a primary desire of the soul, because every time you experience something outside of you as a contrast to what you want and what you don't want, that negative emotion, or what we call them negative, right? Negative state, or actually we should say not negative, we should say disbalance, or distorted. Distortion is probably the best word. And you want to harmonize that distortion, and you do it with your focus. Okay? There's a point in a circle where you can focus, and if you dive into this really deeply, that's a masculine way of dealing with it until you go into the neutrality of things. And that brings you a type of bliss from that negative state. And then another one is when you focus and you move towards more like a surrender. There's a courage and surrender. You can, of course, there is no surrender with some degree of courage, and there is no courage with some degree of surrender, right? But you see what I'm trying to say? Like, you can choose more of the surrender if it's easier for you, more courage if it's easier for you. That's masculine way, and then that's feminine way. And I also have to say what people mean by divine masculine, divine feminine, because everybody uses these words, blah blah blah. But everybody creates the image of that. It's like, oh, that's what it probably look like. No, it's much more simple than that. What they call a divine masculine, a divine feminine. Divine masculine is the light, the bliss. There's another word for it is orgon. Sometimes people call orgon energy. That's light. And that happens when you take the pain and the pleasure and weave it together, and then you get that light. Okay? And then if you have depression and fear, you weave it together, you get that peace or love. Okay, and that's basically the whole point on this level. And then, of course, that doesn't end, but it only starts. See, like, that's what a lot of people, when they say, like, oh, enlightenment. Dude, everything that happens every day, if you have this capacity to focus on whatever you're feeling, and every single day you can tune in to some degree of bliss and bliss and peace, and you can say in that moment you're enlightened. Yep. But from there, it's not it, is it? Like, the life doesn't just end. It is like, oh, you arrived. No, it just starts. Now from there, the soul wants to have emotions, right? It doesn't just want to have pure bliss and peace. It wants to have emotions. So then there's some sort of engagement, what kind of emotions you have. But all these aligned emotions. Then those 12 times 12, because they're the 144 mixtures of that. So then you become this, like, you want one of these, like a palette of these mixtures, right? And sometimes you want one, and sometimes you want the other. And 144 versions and mixtures of these is what you're looking for. Each one of them is like a little gem that has a little bit of this color, that color, that color, right? And that's what the soul wants. It wants to, right now it wants this, and then it wants that. It's one of these 144. And then after you have that, it's a state, because that's what another word for it is, state. And then after that, you're not there yet, right? Because you may want to have an experience, or like an event, or to take to some form. So then you start imagining. Now that you have a state, you start imagining what kind of form would that state take. And you may imagine the outcome or the event or something that you like to experience, okay? And then usually that you could call that a dream, right? You imagine something that you want to experience. That's your desire. You want this to take this form, whatever it may be, okay? And then that's not the only thing. You don't want just the, series of these random events, right? Like that you call your desires. That's not what you ultimately want. What you want is every single of this event and desire to weave into the story. And this is why you have this material reality, physical reality, where these manifestations keep coming and coming and creating into the one cohesive story. Okay? And that's how you play the game of life. It's the most basic thing. Think about it. Of course, look at it inside of you. You will recognize that you want. First, you'll recognize, if you're honest with yourself, that you do want certain degree of peace and bliss. That's the first thing that you need. The second, you want this mixture of these emotions, states. Then you need them to take certain form. And then you need to take them a certain, flow in the story. And then that's it. Then you go back into it again. And then that's part of infinite creation. This is how you live your life. It all happens automatically anyway. It's just that if you are not doing this, what I described, you are essentially going through the exact same process I've mentioned, but you know, you manifest like a misaligned state, you manifest misaligned form of your desire, and you manifest some bullshit ass story that you don't want to live. And that happens because you're seeking one or the other, like an extreme. You think, okay, this is bad, I need to fix this with this good. And this is how you get trapped. So anyway, the whole moral of the story of this video is everything is holographic, it's non-linear, and look for the answer in between of things. That's all there is. That is in a nutshell as like a navigation system. What you're gonna do with this is up to you. You know, if you have a negative emotion and you want to cover it with a positive emotion, that's you will create the certain type of dreams that you don't want, the story that you don't want. But maybe you do, because if you really didn't want to, you would. Well, I don't know if this is true. You know, like maybe really, everybody needs to understand the most fundamental way the life works in order for them to then to decide of what kind of beliefs they want to take about that life. But everything that I described to you, this is non-arguable and non-opinion. This is the physics of it. And then the moment you go into the, you know, the belief system, for example, the view of the reality, then you can create whatever the fuck you want. You can say that I'm in a create of my reality. You can say that like I'm just tuning into the vibration that I want to experience, and everything just comes to me, whatever the fuck you want. Then that is up to you. Um, then there is no wrong. You know what I'm saying? Really, in essence, there is no wrong belief anyway. It's just you test or you're experiencing this type of reality. But if you are experiencing this type of reality and you don't like it, I'm saying that you can change it, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. Peace.